Book 1, Chapter 2 of the Lancashire Witches. This recording is in the public domain. Reading by Andy Minter. The Lancashire Witches, a Romance of Pendle Forest, by William Harrison Ainsworth. Book 1, Alison Device. Chapter 2, The Black Cat and the White Dove. Little Jennet watched her sister's triumphant departure with a look in which there was far more of envy than sympathy, and when her mother took her hand to lead her forth, she would not go, but, saying she did not care for any such idle sights, went sullenly back to the inner room. When there, however, she could not help peeping through the window, and saw Susan and Nancy join the revel rout, with feelings of increased bitterness. "I wish it would rain and spoil their finery," she said, sitting down on her stool, and plucking the flowers from her basket in pieces. "And yet, why cannot I enjoy such seats like other folk? The truth is, I have no heart for it. Folks say," she continued, after a pause, "that Grandmother Demdike is a witch, and can do as she pleases. I wonder if she made Alizon so pretty. No, that cannot be, for Alizon's no favourite of hern. If she loves any one, it's me. Why dunna she make me good looking, then? They say it's sinful to be a witch. If so, how come Grandmother Demdike to be one? But I'm observed that folks as calls her witch are afeared on her, so it may be pure spite on their part." As she thus mused, a great black cat belonging to her mother, which had followed her into the room, rubbed himself against her, putting up his back and purring loudly. "Ah, Tib," said the little girl. "How are you, Tib? I didna know you were here. Let me ask you some questions, Tib." The cat mewed, looked up, and fixed his great yellow eyes upon her. "One 'ud think you understood what was said to you, Tib," pursued little Jennet. "We'n see what you say to this. Shanna I ever be Queen o' May, like sister Alizon?" The cat mewed in a manner that the little girl found no difficulty in interpreting the reply into "No." "How's that, Tib?" cried Jennet, sharply. "If I thought you meant it, I'd beat you, sirrah. Answer me another question, you saucy knave. Who will be luckiest, Alizon or me?" This time the cat darted away from her, and made 2 or 3 skirmishes round the room, as if gone suddenly mad. "I con make nowt o' that," observed Jennet, laughing. All at once the cat bounded upon the chimney board, over which was placed a sampler, worked with the name Alizon. "Why, Tib really seems to understand me, I declare," observed Jennet, uneasily. "I should like to ask him a few more questions, if I durst," she added, regarding with some distrust the animal, who had now returned, and begun rubbing himself against her as before. "Tib, Tib!" The cat looked up and mewed. "Pretty Tib, sweet Tib," continued the little girl, coaxingly, "what mun one do to be a witch like Grandmother Demdike?" The cat again dashed twice or thrice madly round the room, and then stopping suddenly at the hearth, sprang up the chimney. "Ey'n frightened you away, at any rate," observed Jennet, laughing. "And yet it may mean summat," she added, reflecting a little, "for ey'n heerd say as how witches fly up chimneys on broomsticks to attend to their Sabbaths. I should like to fly i' that manner, and change myself into another shape any shape but my own. Oh, that I could be as pretty as Alizon! I dunna know what I need do to be like her." Again the great black cat was beside her, rubbing against her and purring. The child was a good deal startled, for she had not seen him return, and the door was shut, though he might have come in through the open window, only she had been looking that way all the time, and had never noticed him. Strange! "Tib," said the child, patting him, "thou hasna answered my last question. How's one to become a witch?" As she made this inquiry, the cat suddenly scratched her in the arm, so that the blood came. The little girl was a good deal frightened as well as hurt. and, withdrawing her arm quickly, made a motion of striking the animal. But starting backwards, erecting his tail, and spitting, the cat assumed such a formidable appearance that she did not dare to touch him. And then she perceived that some drops of blood stained her white sleeve, giving the spots a certain resemblance to the letters J and D, her own initials. At this moment, when she was about to scream for help, though she knew no one was in the house, all having gone away with the May Day revellers, a small white dove flew in at the open window, and, skimming round the room, alighted near her. No sooner had the cat caught sight of this beautiful bird, that, instead of preparing to pounce upon it, as might have been expected, he instantly abandoned his fierce attitude, and, uttering a sort of howl, sprang up the chimney as before. But the child scarcely observed this, her attention being directed towards the bird, whose extreme beauty delighted her. It seemed quite tame too, and allowed itself to be touched, and even drawn towards her, without an effort to escape. Never surely was seen so beautiful a bird, with such milk-white feathers, such red legs, and such pretty yellow eyes, with crimson circles round them. So thought the little girl, as she gazed upon it, and pressed it to her bosom. In doing this, gentle and good thoughts came upon her, and she reflected what a nice present this pretty bird would make to her sister Alizon on her return from the merrymaking, and how pleased she should feel to give it to her. And then she thought of Alizon's constant kindness to her, and half reproached herself with the poor return she made for it, wondering she could entertain any feelings of envy towards one so good and amiable. All this while the dove nestled in her bosom. While thus pondering, the little girl felt an unaccountable drowsiness steal over her, and presently afterwards dropped asleep, when she had a very strange dream. It seemed to her that there was a contest going on between two spirits, a good one and a bad, the bad one being represented by the great black cat, and the good spirit by the white dove. What they were striving about she could not exactly tell, but she felt that the conflict had some relation to herself. The dove at first appeared to have but a poor chance against the claws of its sable adversary, but the sharp talons of the latter made no impression upon the white plumage of the bird, which now shone like silver armour, and in the end the cat fled, yelling as it darted off, "Thou art victorious now, but her soul shall yet be mine." Something awakened the little sleeper at the same moment, and she felt very much terrified at her dream, as she could not help thinking her own soul might be the one in jeopardy, and her first impulse was to see whether the white dove was safe. Yes, there it was, still nestling in her bosom, with its head under its wing. Just then she was startled at hearing her own name pronounced by a hoarse voice, and looking up, she beheld a tall young man standing at the window. He had a somewhat gipsy look, having a dark olive complexion and fine black eyes, though set strangely in his head, like those of Jennet and her mother, coal black hair, and very prominent features of a sullen and almost savage cast. His figure was gaunt, but very muscular, his arms being extremely long, and his hands unusually large and bony, personal advantages which made him a formidable antagonist in any rustic encounter, and in such he was frequently engaged, being of a very irascible temper and turbulent disposition. He was clad in a holiday suit of dark green serge, which fitted him well, and carried a nosegay in one hand, and a stout blackthorn cudgel in the other. This young man was James Device, son of Elizabeth, and some 4 or 5 years older than Alizon. He did not live with his mother in Whalley, but in Pendle Forest, near his old relative, Mother Demdike, and had come over that morning to attend the wake. "What you about, Jennet?" inquired James Device, in tones naturally hoarse and deep, and which he took as little pains to soften as he did to polish his manners, which were more than ordinarily rude and churlish. "What you about, say, wench?" he repeated. "Why dunna you go to t' green to see t' morris dancers foot it round Maypole? Come along wi' me." "I dunna want to go, Jem," replied the little girl. "Boh yo shan go, ey tell ye," returned her brother. "Yo shan see your sister dance. Yo con sit at home any day, but May Day comes only once a year, and Alizon winna be queen twice in her life. So come along wi' me directly, or ey'n mek ye." "I should like to see Alizon dance, and so I win go wi' you, Jem," replied Jennet, getting up.
Otherwise your orders should